What is going on, guys? It's Mast1c0re here. Welcome back to another PS4 and PS5 tutorial. So in this one, we're going to be covering the full Mast1c0re exploit that's now been released by Okage. This is part 3 that allows us to exploit the PS4 and PS5 using the PS2 emulator. Right now, this can only be used to sideload other PS2 games. So you can use this to load other PS2 ISOs. You can send them over the network. So kind of a novelty thing, but there are further implications of this exploit in future. But right now, this is what we can do with it. We can sideload other PS2 games, and I'm going to give you a full guide here showing you exactly how to set this up from start to finish to get it running on the PS4 or PS5 on the latest firmware. So I'm going to do this on the PS5 on version 6.50 firmware. For the PS5, you can also do this on 10.01 for the PS4 and 9.00 for the PS4 as well if you just want to have a play around with it, even though it's not really necessary on 9.00. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and take a look at setting this up right here. So we've got the GitHub page from Okage here, the Mast1c0re exploit. In here, we've got samples. There's a few different projects for this exploit. The one we're looking for here is the big one, which is the PS Load Game Net. Allows you to load a PS2 ISO over the network. So we're going to select this option here. If we go into the bin folder, you can see you'll find the actual save files in here. So you've got a 10.01 save for PS4s on 10.01. You've got a 5.05 and a 9.00 for PS4 as well. And then you've got the PS5 for 6.50. So this is the decrypted save that you can inject to your own save game for the game and get the modded save up and running that way. But what would be easier is if we use a pre-made save. So EchoStretch has already gone ahead and done that, injected the decrypted save into a current save file. And then you can just download the pre-made save and re-sign it to your profile. That'll be a quicker way to set this up, and that's how we'll do it here in this video. So we can go ahead and download the pre-made save file for whatever firmware version, PS4 or PS5 that you're using. There's one for 9.00 on the PS4, 6.50 on the PS5, and 10.01 on the PS4 as well. So download the save that pertains to your firmware version. So we're going to download the file there, and then also if we go back to the GitHub page and we go back here, we also need the sendgame.py. This is the Python script that's going to allow us to send the PS2 ISO over the network. So you're going to want to make sure you go ahead and get this script. So if we click on it here and then go to the raw script, we can then right click and save as, and I'm just going to save it to my desktop as send-game.py as all files, and then click save, and that will save it over to your desktop. And you're also going to need a PS2 ISO to sideload. In my case, I'm using this one, Keolona 2, and it is about 1.2 gigabytes, so not too big. It's a good idea to start with a small game first of all, just to test to make sure it's working. And this is a game that is known to be working with this exploit, so I definitely recommend testing with this game first before you start trying to sideload other PS2 games. Okay, so when you're on the PS5 or PS4 that you're going to try this exploit on, what you want to do first of all is make sure you plug in a USB drive into your PS4 or PS5 and then load the Okage Shadow King game. And we want to create a new save file on this PS2 game. Okay, so it says press the start button, which is the touchpad button on your PS4 or PS5 controller. And then we're going to go over to new game. And we're just going to set up a quick new game here. We'll just use whatever profile name we want. And we'll just click OK. We'll say yes. And we'll just get in here. Sometimes the emulation kind of glitches out on the UI with the PS5, which is why it looks kind of weird. And basically, we're just going to skip through all the initial dialogue. We're just going to get through all of this. Okay, there we go. So once we skip through all the dialogue, we're just going to head out into the main area here. We're going to go up to the bedroom to where the save file section is. So if we go over here to the bedroom, this allows us to save the game. So we're going to go in here and we're going to save game. And we'll just select save slot number 1. There we go. We've now created a save complete. Okay, so now we can go ahead and exit out of the game. We'll close out of it here, and we're going to copy that save to the USB drive. So we're going to go into settings. We're going to go down to save data and game app settings. It's called something like application save data management on the PS4. We're going to go in there. We're going to select our PS4 save, and we're going to go to console storage and select our Okage Shadow King game, and we're going to copy it. And we're going to copy it over to our USB drive right there. There we go. So it's now on the USB. If we go to USB drive saves, you can see it shows up right there. So it's on our USB drive. So now we can switch back over to the computer and plug in that USB drive back into our computer. So on the computer, we're going to go to our USB drive right here. We've got the PS4 folder, save data, then your account ID folder. And then in there, we've got the title ID of the game, which in my case is 02282, which is the European version. If you have the US version, it will be something like 2291 or something. So we're going to go in there and we've got our save file right here. So if you're on the PS5, you're going to want to take the save file for the PS5 from Echo Stretch. If you're on the PS4, you're going to take the PS4 save from Echo Stretch. We're going to open up that zip file. We're going to go into PS4, save data, Echo Stretch, and then the title ID that matches the title ID from your save. So in my case, that's 02282. So I'm going to go into 02282. So then what we're going to do here is take the modded save file here and swap our save file out for the modded one. So we're going to go ahead and replace files in destination. So now the save file that we have on here is the modded one that loads the PS2 ISO over the network. So that's what we're going to do right there. Now, the only problem with this save file right now is that it's not signed to our account ID. So the PS5 or PS4 will not recognize the save file. So what we need to do is re-sign the save. Now, there's two ways we can do this. If you have the Save Wizard application, you can use that, and that will be the quickest and easiest way to do this. The other way to do this is that if you have a jailbreakable PS4, like a 9.00 PS4, then you can use the Apollo Save tool on the PS4 to re-sign the save file as well. So I'll show you both methods here in this video, starting with Save Wizard. Okay, so to re-sign the save file in Save Wizard, this is the easiest method. We're going to go ahead and open up the Save Wizard application. Okay, so once it opens, if it doesn't automatically detect the USB drive, you'll have to unplug it and plug it back in. And then after doing that, it should detect it. There we go. Okay, so if we head over to the Resign section, we can see the title ID of the game there, 02282. We're going to click on the Import button. And then we're going to find the modded save zip file. So in my case, it's the PS5 one that I want for 6.50. Obviously, if you're on PS4, select the correct PS4 zip file. So we're going to select the modded save zip file, click open. And then we want to select the title ID that matches the title ID of our save file. So in my case, that's 02282. So I'm going to select the 02282 one, double click it, click on the actual save file here, and then click import. And then we'll choose our profile, which will re-sign it to that profile. So we'll click apply. That needs to be the same profile that you were using on your PS5 or PS4, where you created the save file on. And then we're going to go ahead and just click yes. And it will go ahead and import that save and also re-sign it to work with our PS4 or PS5 account. Okay, once done, re-signing successful, we can click OK. And that is it. We've got the save on there, re-signed to our profile. So all we need to do now is plug in that USB drive back to our PS5 or PS4 that's on the latest firmware. And we should be able to load that save file up now on our PS4 or PS5. So what I'm going to do now is show you guys how to re-sign the save file in Apollo for jailbroken PS4 users who don't have Save Wizard. So you can do that instead in order to be able to successfully re-sign the save file. But obviously, if you've already done it in Save Wizard, then I'll put a timestamp up on screen right now that you can skip to. Obviously, there's chapter titles in the description as well. And you can just go ahead and skip to that section of the video to continue from there. But obviously, if you have a jailbreakable PS4 now, I'm going to show you guys how you can get set up to re-sign the save file in Apollo. Okay, so to re-sign the save on a jailbroken PS4, before we plug in the USB into our PS4, we're going to first of all get the account ID that you see right here. So take a note of that account ID, copy it into a notepad document like I've done here so that you have it on hand. And then we're going to unplug that USB and plug it in to our PS4, our jailbroken PS4. Okay, so on the PS4, you need to have the Apollo Save tool downloaded and installed. I'll leave it linked in the video description. And you need to be running the Gold Hen payload so that you have your PS4 jailbroken. And then from there, we're going to go into our settings. We're going to go down to storage. We're going to go to system storage, save data. And in save data, you're just going to check to make sure you don't already have a save installed for the game. So check to make sure you don't have an Okage Shadow King save file on here. You may also want to check your non-installed applications because it might show up as a non-installed application if you don't have the game currently installed. So just make sure you don't already have a save file for the game. If you do, then just delete the save file before moving on to the next step. Okay, so The next thing we need to do is activate our PSN account, our profile on our PS4, and we want to activate it using the same account ID that we got from our save that we created on our PS5 or PS4 that was on the latest firmware. So first of all, we're going to head into the internet browser, go to your exploit host, whichever one you normally use. So I'm currently using KME PS4.site. And then we're going to go to the web offline activator. And then from here, we're going to select our user account, whichever one you're currently signed in on. So I'm signed into this account. You can see my account is already activated with the correct ID. But assuming that yours isn't, you're going to select this box and type in the account ID that you got from your save file. So enter that account ID and then click set and activate. And it should say PSN ID activated successfully. Once that's done, you can then run the Apollo save tool. And obviously make sure you've got the USB drive plugged into the PS4 with the save file on it. And here we go. So 9.00 save patch is applied. So from here, we can head over to USB saves. And in here, we've got our encrypted save file for Okage Shadow King. With our modded save on here, we're going to select it. We're going to select the option to copy save to HDD. And we're going to say yes to re-sign the save. So that will re-sign the save to the correct profile ID that we just activated. And it will move it over to the hard drive. So there we go, that's done now. So now all we have to do is close out of Apollo and then head over to settings and copy the save back over to the USB by heading down to application save data management and save data in system storage, copy to USB storage device. If you get an error message when selecting this option about having to update, just restart your PS4 and try again. It should work. So there's our Okage Shadow King game. Again, if you don't have the game installed, it will be one of these non-installed applications. So you'll have to go in there and find the save. But for me, because I actually have the retail version installed on this PS4 as well, it shows up properly for me. But anyway, we're going to select that save file and we're going to copy it over to our USB. We'll say yes to overwrite the save that's already on the USB. And there we go. We have successfully re-signed the save using our jailbroken PS4. We can now unplug that USB drive, plug it into our PS5 that's on the latest firmware or PS4 that's on the latest firmware and load that save up and it should work. So that's what we'll do right now. I'm going to unplug my USB drive and plug it back into my PS5. Okay, so back on the PS5, we're going to go to settings. We're going to go down to save data and game app settings, or the equivalent option on the PS4. And we're going to go to save data on PS4, USB drive. And you'll see the save shows up right there. And we're just going to copy it over to our internal storage and overwrite the pre-existing save if there was one already on there. And then we are good. So we can now run the game. Okay, so the game is loading up. We will also want to take a note of our IP address. So if we head over to settings and go down to system and then system software and console information, you can see my IPv4 address is showing up right there. I highly recommend using a wired connection for this because it will be faster for transferring the ISO over, because we have to transfer it over the network. So note down your IP address there, and then we're going to switch back over once again to the game. And here we go. So we're going to press the start button, which is the PS button, or it's the touchpad button on the PS5 or PS4 controller. And then we're going to hit restore game. And this will trigger the exploit, as you can see, debug PS2 game loader network. And now you're just going to wait on this screen until it says waiting for connection. So this can take a while. Sometimes it will pop up within a few seconds. Sometimes it might take a minute or two before the message pops up. So just give it some time. If it takes more than 3 minutes or so, I would just close out of the game and reopen it because it's not perfectly stable. So, it's likely that it's not going to work every single time. So, if it's taking too long, then just close out of the game and reopen it and do it again. But usually it should work within the first minute or two. So while we're waiting for that message, we're going to get things set up here on our computer. So if we switch over to our computer, we're going to need Python for this. So download the latest version of Python if you don't already have it installed from python.org/downloads and run the setup installer to install Python. Once you have Python installed, we're just going to run this send game Python script. So to do that, if you're on Windows 11, you can just right click and open in terminal, or hold down shift and right click and open in terminal in the same location as the Python script here on the desktop. If you're on Windows 10 or something, I guess just create a new folder and put the script inside the new folder, and then go into that folder, and then in the URL bar type in cmd space and then enter, and that will open up a command prompt window in the same location. So either one of those to open up PowerShell or command prompt in the same location as the script. And then we're going to copy the name of the script. Now there is a dependency that's required for this. So you're going to have to do pip install and then do progress. So pip install progress, press enter and let it install that application. Requirement already satisfied because I already have it installed. But if you don't already have that dependency, you will need that in order for this script to work. So run that command first, pip install progress, and then we're going to enter the actual command to run the script, which is going to be Python, and then the name of the script, which is send-game.py, then -i for the IP address, which is going to be 192.168.137.105 in my case. That was the IP address of my PS5, and then -f for file, and then the location of our PS2 ISO. So here's the PS2 ISO I'm going to try and load here. So I'm going to hold down the shift key, right click on it, and then select the option to copy as path. And then I'm going to right click and paste the full path in as the file. So that's the command you want right there. Python send-game-py-i, the IP address of your PS4 or PS5, -f, and then the full path to the ISO file you're trying to load. So if we switch back over to the console here, you can see it says waiting for connection. So all I'm going to do is hit enter on this, and you can see it's now uploading the file. And if we switch back over here, you can see it now says downloading disk01.iso. Okay, so we're over halfway done now. Also to note that you can also check the progress just on the actual script itself. It shows like how many bytes have been transferred out of the total. And it also gives you a little progress bar there on the left as well with the hashtags. So you can kind of see roughly what the percentage is on the computer, as well as on the PS5 with the actual progress bar that's available there. Okay, and as you can see, we have this completely different PS2 game running here on our PS5. So Klonoa 2 running instead of Okage Shadow King. As you can see here, it still says that we're playing Okage Shadow King, as you can see right there. But we are on this different PS2 game. So if I hit the PS button, you can see I have a continue option because I did load this game previously, and the save file is still on here that I created the last time I ran this game with this method. So that means your save files will work. You will not lose the save file after reloading the game again. So that is pretty handy. That was one of the things I was potentially worried about there. But that doesn't appear to be an issue. So also it doesn't overwrite the Okage Shadow King save file either when you create a new save on here. Now, one of the things that might happen though is that if you create a save file on one game loaded with this method, and then you load a different game with this method and create a save file for that, it may overwrite the save from the previous game that you ran. So that's one issue that might pop up here with the save files. But apart from that, the save files seem to be working just fine. Okay, so once we get into the game here, as you can see, it's running pretty well. Still a few graphical bugs here and there, but for the most part, it seems to be working just fine. So I have tried a few PS2 games at this point. Obviously, this one runs no problem. I also tried Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition Remix. So that game actually ran just fine as well. Of course, that one was already tested by Macaulay as well, so no issues there. I also tried some homebrew stuff for the PS2 as well. I tried SNES Station, which unfortunately did not load. I also tried Codebreaker cheats, so running one of these games with Codebreaker cheats, but I could not get the ULaunch menu to run. It would just crash. I also tried other menus like My PS2 or something. That one appeared for a few seconds, but then it just crashed instantly afterwards. So that was unfortunate. I also tried just loading the Codebreaker ELF file directly from an ISO, but that also just crashed. So unfortunately, it doesn't appear like any of that stuff is working at the moment, any kind of PS2 homebrew. Maybe there's some kind of configuration change that could be made to get those working. I also tried some other PS2 games. Devil May Cry 3 was one of the games I tried, and it also just crashed on load. That was the special edition version, the NTSC American version. You can also maybe try a European PAL version of a game, which might work instead. But yeah, so compatibility is definitely pretty spotty with this so far. So of course, this is more of a novelty thing that you can do with your PS4 or PS5 on the latest firmware. You can use this PS2 game to sideload other PS2 ISOs and play them on your PS4 or PS5. So yeah, it's not really that useful in the grand scheme of things. However, this exploit itself does have further implications. So if we switch over to our computer and take a look at the GitHub page for the Mast1c0re exploit, it does outline some improvements that could be made and some other things that could be done using this exploit. So first it says upload and load a config file, config mu PS4. This is the PS2 emulator config file that can be edited to tailor the emulator to work better with specific PS2 games. That way, if there's games that are causing issues or not loading, you could configure the emulator settings to get them to load or fix graphical bugs and stuff like that. So that's a next step that could be made to this exploit. Another one is the ability to load Lua files, arbitrary code execution. So that's cturt's Mast1c0re Part 2, which is a big one. It's not available yet, but cturt's blog post did outline that in the second part, which is yet to be released, that it may be possible to sideload other PS4 apps, not just PS2 games, but PS4 native applications like maybe homebrew emulators, maybe even PS4 games. That is yet to be seen, but that's another potential implication of this exploit in future. We also have kernel exploits, so this could be chained with a kernel exploit, a new kernel exploit that comes out for the PS4 or PS5 to get a full jailbreak on the PS4 or a partial jailbreak on the PS5 when combined with this Mast1c0re exploit. You've got eBoot version 1.0 support, additional firmware version support, loading PS2 games from a USB or from the hard drive, because currently we have to send them over the network. So if we could load them directly from a USB or the hard drive, it would skip that step. And then we've also got make system calls firmware independent. I think that just basically means that you could have one save file that would work for all firmwares instead of having to have different save files for different firmware versions. And then we also have additional PS2 game save exploits for other games. In other words, other PS2 games that can trigger the same exploit instead of having to use Okage Shadow King. There may be some other PS2 games that could be exploited to be used instead. So you've got that. There's also additional project ideas like enabling debug settings on an FTP server. So there's definitely some interesting implications of this exploit, even though right now it can only be used to load PS2 games. But in future, you have all of those things that could potentially be done. So anyway, I'm going to leave it here for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.